Welcome to the Dr. Remina Pinjwani Show, where we're optimizing wellness together. I am your host, Dr. Remina. Today I have an interesting conversation with Brian Galke. He is well known as a facial decoder and speaker. He teaches us how to interpret the subtle signals that people's faces give off to better understand and communicate with others. You don't want to miss this one. Hey, Dr. Remina here. I have such an amazing guest and friend of mine, Brian Galke. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you for having me. This is an awesome space.
It is, right? Like art, get inspiration.
I know. I got to walk around for a little bit. I like the exhibit that's here. So, yeah.
Yeah. Every room has its own thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's great. But for those of y'all that aren't familiar with Brian Galke's work, he's truly amazing and he's got some skills. So let's start at the beginning. Mm-hmm. How did you get here?
So introvert by nature. When I was growing up as a kid, so I always picked jobs. People had to come to me, bartender, bar back, server, bouncer, you name it. Worked retail even after college. I went into help desk when I went into IT. So I always looked for people for a way to come talk to me. Well, in 2010, a friend came to town. She said, let's go to dinner. I'd show up at the restaurant. She's like, I'm not going to make it. I'm like, here we go. She's like, no, you got to come meet this guy. I said, why do I need to come meet this guy? She goes, because he reads faces. And I go, yeah, I'm not coming over there for that. And she's like, no, come on. I'm in from out of town. Come visit me. I'm like, I'm at the restaurant. So she finally convinced me to go. But I went to go prove that this guy was full of crap because I thought there's no way. I've got books on body language because that's what introverts do is we pick up books to try and understand people better. And I went over to go prove this guy was a fraud. And instead, Mac won me over, and I ended up buying his book. So this is the original book from 2010.
The original one. Look at that. The binding is like a little...
it's all falling apart.
Yeah.
You can see, for you guys, this is all the studying I went and did with him. I drive from Dallas to Fort Worth twice a month just to learn about every single feature on a face. And it changed my life. So 2011, I drove Dallas to Fort Worth twice a month to do group training with Mac. In 2012, I got certified. Well, as I was learning this, I started using it at work, and I still thought it can't be real, but I would go and I'd kind of leave the book laying out when I was traveling for work, and they'd go, oh, what's the book like? Well, I took this class, kind of think this guy's full of crap, but let me ask you questions, so let's look in the book together. And I started seeing it was very accurate. And what it was also doing is if I go somewhere, then all of a sudden the servers wanted to come talk to me, and I started getting free food and drinks. I'm like, hey, this is a win-win on this thing. But then I started using it in my professional environment. So I became a corporate trainer, and I started looking at people and figuring out, I know what I want to say, but how do I teach it to the person? How do I get the best response out of them? That's what made a difference. And then I just started using it more and more. I kept getting promotions at work. So I went help desk to installer, corporate trainer. Then I went and managed the help desk. After that, program manager, then director of program management, then sales engineer, then an account manager. And I'd moved up. So over the course of 20 years, I had 9 different promotions, with my last job being a regional vice president of sales with a $40 million book of business and staff reporting to me and everything. But even during that time, for a few years, we had a tactical team called the Pro Demo Team. And that was people who would fly all around the U.S. to any customer over $1 million to do presentations. It was me and 2 other people. And I wouldn't tell anybody what I was doing, which is why the company's called Subtle Skills now. Mm-hmm. But I would go into a room because at your hotel, what do? You check your projector, your PowerPoint, your presentation, everything else, and your actual product. But people were always the unknown. Well, we did a lot of government contracts, which was secret evaluation committees. We didn't know who was going to be on until we walked in the room. So I couldn't really do research on people, but you used to be able to look at body language with their arms crossed or not. But we used to sell technology to jails and prisons. So very stoic people would just kind of sit like this the whole time and give no emotion away, because that's what keeps them safe in their daily environment. But when I learned to look at other people, I think, okay, how do they take in information? How do they process? Are their eyebrows high or low? Are their eyes angled up? Are their eyes angled down? Every single thing about that told me a little bit about the person. And because I was no longer trying to pitch, but I was trying to create a conversation with people, it changed the environment.
That is so fascinating. Well, first of all, to be an introvert, so I relate to that as well. Mm-hmm. So we definitely get into our own heads, and to get out of our shells. No one would be able to tell how we communicate with the people.
Exactly.
Yeah. But what I also want to bring to light is this is an amazing skill. Mm-hmm. And when we talk about, or when we both of us talk about the 4 basic needs of humans, right? Mm-hmm. The last 2 that you mentioned is the most important. And I can work on the other stuff like physical and whatever medicine-wise. But what I love is our paths cross in this way, and it crosses. It's applicable in
everyday life
100%.
for everyone.
Yeah.
Because the whole point is for relationships and have people feel the need to be heard
Yes.
and seen. So yeah, tell us a little bit about that aspect.
Sure.
And then also, I think for those that are a little hesitant, let's talk about
I like
the term
skeptics.
pseudoscience.
Oh, yes.
Right?
I love skeptics. No, I'm a skeptic by nature, but I'm curious. So that's how we'll kind of dig into that. So the 4 basic human needs, I'm going to credit this to Brian Bogert. So Brian Bogert is one who talked about this at an event I was at. I'm like, this makes perfect sense. So the 4 basic human needs are physical safety, emotional safety. People want to feel seen and heard, and people want to feel connected. So the first 2, everybody knows. If you don't have shelter, you can die. But then emotional, they want to feel emotionally connected, right? Or emotional safety. Well, people want to feel free to be the person that they are. Now, once they reach those first 2, then people want to feel seen and heard. So it doesn't mean you have to be doing selfies on social media, but if in your environment and the people you're with, you want to feel seen, you want to feel heard. I want to have a voice. Very bad things happen to people who don't feel seen and heard. Look at the kid that doesn't get any attention. What do? They create bad behaviors because they get attention that way, because they don't get attention from being the good kid. So I call it like the Simpson dilemma, because you've got Bart Simpson, Lisa Simpson. Well, Lisa, if she doesn't get all A's, something's wrong with her. Bart, as long as he does one thing right, he gets attention. So we all have our different ways of vying for other people's attention. And then the last part is we want to feel connected. And why is that important? Well, when we feel seen and heard, we want to create a connection. If I spent the whole time doing the podcast like this while we're talking, right? I mean, you're being heard and you're seen, but we don't have a connection.
Right.
But we do that mentally and emotionally when we're talking to people, especially, I love this device. It connects us to the world, but disconnects us from each other.
Oh, absolutely. That's the biggest things these days.
Oh, yes. This, smartwatches, you name it. People, and I've gotten bad on, I've got a young kid, so she likes her tablet. I'm fine with it. Tablets are just bigger or smaller TVs. When we were kids, I watched a lot of TV.
Right.
But it's when people go out and, like, we went to dinner actually right over here at Nicosina, because since we're in East Dallas, I used to actually live over here. And we went to dinner one time with some friends, and we brought our daughter, and they had their 2 kids. The minute they walked in, they slapped both tablets down, put headphones on their kids. And I'm all for it. We bring her tablet, so if she finishes her dinner before us or anything like that, then she can have her tablet. But you don't want to give them a tablet the minute they walk in the door, because they're not learning to create that connection with each other. Eye contact is a lost art. Why? Because everybody that's grown up in the day and age with a device like this, they can take the perfect picture, craft the perfect text message, send the perfect email, and it's all while doing this. And I'm purposely doing this so nobody can see us on the camera, right? So if I did the rest of the podcast like this, I can still look at you, but then we're not paying attention. Yes. And neither's the audience, right? But people do this all the time. Just sit, yep, I'm listening. No, it's good. And so you see people go out. So that's where people are losing the ability to have face-to-face conversation. And now I'm a little ADD-ish. So one of the beautiful things about this is if I start feeling like I'm getting distracted, then what I do is I think, okay, well, what's another shape of the facial feature? And it keeps me connected to you. And body language is good, but if I talk to you the whole time like this, eventually you're going to say, hey, my eyes are up here, right?
I want to say something about that. That is truly fascinating, because you're training your mind to be in the present moment.
Yes.
And a lot of times when you're trying to make a connection, whether it's a salesperson, whether it's meeting a new person, whether it's a patient or a colleague, or if you're an entrepreneur trying to establish your business and branding, you want to build that trust. But you're right. Like, if you don't have the ability to first look at someone in the eye and build that connection, well, they're not going to trust you.
Right.
But then also, if you lose track of the present moment, how do you draw yourself back in and to make it productive?
Yes.
And to communicate what you do in a way that they will be receptive.
Yes. And so that's what, being an introvert, you're in a prison of your own mind in a public setting. But when that happens, that's the whole thing, is people think because you're out public, oh, you must be an extrovert. Well, I'm a bit of both. I'm an ambivert, so I'm an extrovert and an introvert. So I'd love to be around people, but I was terrified about talking to people at the same time. But when I'm focused on you, I'm not thinking about me. And that's what makes a big, big difference. Is a lot of times well, what do they think of me? What am I wearing? Am I doing okay? But when I'm focused on you and creating connection, all those thoughts go away. So you break free the prison of your own mind by focusing on someone else. A great book on the subject is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. So anybody who's not read it, he went through the Holocaust, and it was literally from the time he got off a train, you turn this way, you live, you turn this way, you die. And it's some guard looking at you and determining where you go. But because he was a medical professional, he helped take care of other prisoners. And what he found is the people who said, I want to see my wife again, I want to see my husband again, I want to see my kids again, they're the ones who could survive and saying, just, I'm going to survive this. we have a greater capacity to do things when we're focused on others and not just ourselves.
I mean, and it goes back to the need for humans to not be lonely, to
Yes.
build that relationship
Absolutely.
of quality. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I mean, if you go back far enough, your tribe is what kept you alive because there was safety in numbers. So if you had a family or anything like that, they used to say it takes a village to raise a kid. That's because it
Sure
literally
does.
did take a village, right? It wasn't just the parents. It was who's going to watch them while somebody goes and hunts, who's going to do this while somebody goes and farms. So we used to have a lot bigger connections than we do. It's crazy. I went to a law enforcement training where they were teaching micro expressions and some other things a year ago. Do you know what the number one factor was on why people are less sociable now than they used to be 50 to 100 years ago?
I'm guessing it's social media.
No.
Or really?
Air conditioning.
Air conditioning.
Because before air conditioning, people used to sit out on their front porches. And so you saw your neighbors and you said hello. Now, what do? We park our car in the garage. We get inside our car. We back out. We shut it. If the neighbor's outside, we may wave. But then we drive off. We come back. We park in our garage again. We go sit in the air conditioning. So people used to be more sociable. I actually used to have a house, over here off Swiss Avenue, and it had a big wraparound front porch. And we would actually go on nights before the mosquitoes got too bad and sit outside, and you'd meet your neighbors that way. But once we all got air conditioning, think about the way modern houses are built. There is no more front patio.
Oh, very true. It's all congested.
Yes.
And yeah, you're right.
So what did people do during COVID is they put chairs in the front yard. Why? So they could actually talk to each other again because they weren't going to work. They weren't doing all these things. So there's several things. This isn't the most evil device. Like you could say AC is evil or whatever.
Yeah.
It's things that made our life better, but we have to focus now on keeping the relationships alive at the exact same time.
Yeah, you have to be intentional.
Yes.
And that's amazing.
Mhm.
So I love it. We could talk about so
Yeah.
deep. Yeah,
Yes.
I love that part. But I think for the skeptics,
Mhm.
let's talk about the difference between physiognomy and pseudoscience.
Sure. So a pseudoscience is anything that is deemed a science that can't beat the science or cannot be replicated with the scientific method. But that's the funny thing is, it was only called a pseudoscience because somebody way back when said, hey, this is a science. It's not. If you actually Google the definition of physiognomy, it's the art of understanding others based on their facial features. Art, not science. But if you look at body language isn't a science. Micro expressions aren't a science. You can sit here and go down the list. Yoga is not a science. But do they help? Meditation is not a science. And that's the funny thing is, people are lazy in that they want to Google something, and whatever they read the first few sentences of, they're done. And so I love skeptics because I'm a skeptic, right? I told you I want to go prove this guy wrong. And here I am 14 years later, and I actually stepped into his shoes because he retired during COVID. And so I started doing gigs for free and speaking for free because I used to be corporate in America. And I think I told you I used to be a regional vice president of sales. And so I would take vacation days and I would attend seminars, and then people would be like, hey, can you speak for a few minutes? I'm like, sure. So I started doing that. And this is what I do full time now, is just teach it to other people, because there's never been a greater time of need to help build relationships with people than as we move more and more towards automation. And people are like, I said, technology is bad. Well, you were in the medical profession, and you are in the medical profession, I should say. How many times will you talk to someone that they're looking at the file and not looking at the person? Yeah, so I see here on your history, and you go, and you're like, I'm over here, right? So you can just replace the paperwork with a tablet, and it's the same thing. But people will be reading over emails and looking and researching things, but they forget to put it down and treat the person like a person.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Every day you have to constantly focus on that and be intentional. Put it down, look at the people in the face.
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a numbers game, and I don't mean that in a bad way. But I can't tell you every doctor I went to over the past few years, but I can tell you the first doctor in a long time that made me feel seen and heard was Dr. Wozni, functional medicine out of
functional medicine.
Yes, out of Scottsdale, Arizona. And a coworker of mine said, hey, you need to go to this guy. You need to get your blood panel work done and everything. So yes, I spent money that wasn't covered by insurance. It was like $200. But it was the first time that I had all this blood work done. And the doctor came in, looked me in the eye, went over my chart, explained what everything on the chart meant. And his recommendations weren't, okay, here's 18 different prescriptions you need. He's like, you need this prescription. You can only get prescription. These things, you can go to Walgreens or Walmart. You can get this. You need, vitamin D plus K2 for absorption. Like, explain things instead of just going, oh, you need vitamin D. No, you need K2. So that he took the time to explain things. That's why I can remember Dr. Waz's name to this day, but not the 10 other break-fix type doctors that I've gone to see.
That's amazing, because people remember the way you made them feel.
100%.
And that's just in one aspect.
Yeah.
I know you have some amazing stories about how you utilize that. I know there was one where you mentioned you're in a restaurant.
Yeah.
But then also, So tell us
Sure.
one of your favorites.
So people go, well, wait, how do you get paid when you do for this, right? And let's go back to pseudoscience.
Oh, yes,
So
right.
I had a video go viral 3 weeks ago that it's at 2.65 million views right now.
Which one was it?
It was just one of analyzing faces.
Okay.
And I think it's because there was a good looking dude that I was analyzing his face, because it literally still gets traction to this day. But the funny thing is there's 65,000 likes on it and there's 1,300 comments. So I'm responding half those comments. So just take that in mathematical numbers. There's 600 negative comments, but I'll respond to every single one of them. Why? Because haters are your helpers. Number one, because if somebody is hating on you, then you have to develop an argument to respond back. So it helps you to think differently. So if we all had everybody who agreed with us, we would never think outside the box on how to respond to people. Number two, there's a lot of ignorance, and I don't mind ignorance. Ignorance is just you don't know. So I'll try and work with someone and go, okay, I'm the same way. And there's a lot of skeptics. I'm cool with that. Like I said, I'm a skeptic, but I'm a curious skeptic. So I dug in. I didn't think that it could be real, but I tried it for myself. And that's the reason I'll argue with people. Now, sometimes it just gets to be fun, right? Because when I put in something stupid, I'm like, okay, well, let's have some fun with this. And the reason I say haters are helpers is because what's going to happen is you're going to come in and then you're going to read through the comments and you're going to stay on my page and I get more credit for that. So why would I not respond to haters?
Yeah.
Now, when I first got started, what does everyone have? Imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
So what would I do? I would hide the negative comments and I wouldn't respond to them. Now I'm like, game on, let's go, because maybe I should be challenged. And when you are challenged on things, then you have to dig deeper, and that either reaffirms or it disproves, and then you can remove those things. So it can be used in anything. I'll tell you a funny story. I make people cry a lot. Okay, so
good or bad?
It's a good way, but
Yeah.
It used to freak me out. When people feel seen and heard for the first time in a long time, a natural thing is it's like that wall is finally broken down, and people are like, you realize that I'm a person. And so when I first started doing it and someone cried, when I moved my headphones from it, I would move away. And because I used to think it was a bad thing, and what are you taught is if someone's hurt, distance yourself from them. But actually, if you sit in a moment with someone who's being vulnerable, you create an even stronger connection. So when I was in Scottsdale, there was a girl who came up. She had several facial features. She had rounded eyebrows, big rounded cheeks. They're called healer cheeks out here. She had a very flat upper lip. She had a very rounded chin, but she had a really deep line right here, which is the verbal affirmation line. And I just told her, look, you have this rounded eyebrows, say you care about the people around you. Healer cheeks that are all the way out here say that you're going to help take care of other people. That's why Mrs. Claus has those cheeks, all kinds of people. So when I said all those things, I said, but if you don't show people what you're doing for them, you're never going to get the affirmation for the things you do. And she burst into tears. And it was tears of joy for being seen, not tears of, attacking or hurting someone, if that makes sense.
No, it does.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah. So it's a business skill. Why? Because businesses have money, but it's really a life skill. So it's not like I learned this I did learn it for professional gain, but it bleeds over to your personal life. So when I get hired for what I call paid practice, and that is events around town will be like, hey, will you come and do more like entertainment versus education? I'm like, yeah. So we agree on an hourly rate, and I'll go work these events. And normally couples come up, and I'll say, okay, do you want to know what you have in common or what you have that's different? What do you think they pick?
Common.
No,
what's different?
They want to know what's different between people. And so when you do that, they'll go and they're like, why are we paying for marriage counselor? I'm like, I know, it's written on your face. It literally this part and this, and you explain to people. So even existing relationships that you've had for years, you can learn to look at people differently and not be offended by it. So using you as an example, and if you look like for people here, so she has eyebrows. See, my eyebrows are a little bit higher. Hers are closer to her eye. So people with low eyebrows tend to have a tendency to interrupt other people. And it's not to be rude. It's because you mentally process things quick, and then you want to help other people get there as well. So whereas I used to be deeply offended if you interrupted me in the middle of my disposition or whatever, now I look and go, okay, low eyebrows. They're just trying to help me get to the point. They're mentally fast people. So it's learning. What I say is with the face comes grace, because when you learn to appreciate people for who they are, not who I want them to be, it's a completely different dynamic.
Such a good perspective there.
Yeah. Well, but it's true. Our faces tell us or tell other people how to talk to us, but we just haven't been trained in it. Now, here's the crazy part. If you go back and look, it's been around since Aristotle. It was part of the academic system until Henry VIII said, I don't like the idea that beggars and vagabonds can use this against their fellow man. he had it ripped out of the academic system. If not, we'd all be trained this as part of school. So if you look at modern schooling is for the industrial age. Go be a good employee, go be a good factory worker, but you're not taught life skills, right? So you're taught high-end math that you may or may never use, but we weren't taught early on, and yes, I'm going to date myself when I say this, to balance a checkbook. Like I had one class that taught me that, but what do you do more of every day? You used to have to balance a checkbook. Body language weren't courses that were offered, except for I took as elective psychology, and body language is in psychology, but it's not taught to business majors and everybody else. So life skills are so important in this day and age because they're not taught to people. And as we become more technology dependent, we lose that even more.
Yeah. So true.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. So, I mean, that definitely gives good insight. This is very replicable. It's very applicable.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Question for you, though.
Yeah.
How do you, I guess, is there a difference when you come across with different cultures? Of course, with prison systems, you're going to be stoic, but does that still translate into different cultures? So, and then what about plastic surgery?
Okay, sure. Yes, it applies to everyone, because even within every subculture, there's still large eyelids, small eyelids. There's eyes angle up, eyes angle down. So it's reading that person in the culture, not a stereotyping of the culture as a whole. However, there are people who are worried about offending someone. So if you are, it's called a non-read. You just skip it and you move on. So some people go, well, my culture doesn't have eyelids. Are you sure about that? I'm pretty sure I can find a picture of somebody who has it. So if it's something you're concerned about, you just skip it. Or you find pictures of the person may wrong. Someone will go, well, my heritage has large noses. Does everybody have large noses? Let's Google, and you can look up culture, race, or anything and find pictures. Go see there's something a little bit different. Mm-hmm. But again, if it's a concern, you just move right past it. So it's not, the big thing that people are confused about is we live in a judgmental society. And so I had this lady just go off on social media about, you're using this it's racism and you're using it to judge people. And I said, watch any of my videos and find where that is. Well, you said that this guy has a flat upper lip and some of the people have large lips. I said, every race has large and small lips, and it's just crazy because people want to find a reason they're being attacked. And then she went off on just kind of crazy stuff. And I finally realized the pattern of what she's saying. Well, these things, and I had to make my private files private because I've been attacked and I'm a victim. So she has victim mentality. So she's going to always look through that lens of someone's out to get her and hurt her. And so you just have to appreciate where people are. So I tried to bring her back around several times, and I'll just keep answering until she went away. but you want to be patient. Yeah, well, you want to help people though. When you see somebody hurting and you go, no, this is a skill that could help you understand other people better. And instead it's, oh no, this is all judgment, racism, and this. I'm like, have you read the book? Have you tried it? And that's my whole thing is, I don't attack anything blindly. I will try it. If I don't like it, I get rid of it. But I'm like, go buy the book. It's not my book. I don't get money off of it. Read the book, try it out. If you don't like it, burn the book. I don't care. But it's people that have these opinions that somebody else told them. You're familiar with NLP, right?
Yes.
Okay. So when you say NLP, people go, oh my God, that's used by cults. And I'm like, yes, but anything can be used as a weapon or not. I drove here in a car. It's either going to be my transportation device or I can run people over with it, right? It's how you use what you learn. NLP is the science of human achievement. And so you can go in and learn things like, what are your filters? And half the time what we believe was given to us by somebody else, our parents, our teachers, whatever. So the strongest reason I recommend people study NLP is not mirroring and matching all these things, but to look at, are your beliefs your beliefs? And we all subconsciously repeat what we see and what we're told. So if you had a teacher told you something was bad, in your head it's bad. But is it really bad? Are people this way because they're that way or because somebody told you everybody's that way? Oh, everybody out there's a crook. Anybody who makes money, they're just evil. Well, no, you didn't read the whole thing. It says the love of money is the root of all evil, not money is the root of all evil. So you have to learn to examine things and go, is this my train of thought or is this what I was told to think? And that's the whole thing. So I pick up everything, micro expressions, body language, statement analysis, all these things, because I just want to learn to try and understand people better and build rapport with them. So that's why I say it's a tool in the tool belt, not the tool. I read body language books for years before I even knew this existed. I do work with Janine Driver. She's a body language expert. And so we do a course called Read the Face, Read the Room, which is how can you proactively go in and prepare for meetings? And then what body language and micro expression should you be looking at when you're in the room to know, am I screwing this up or am I going to win this deal? And that's the whole thing. It's just about learning to understand other people better. The worst thing that you can do, and when I give the audience this example, and I talk about this on stage, is I used to be an international traveler. And when I went to other countries, I thought, oh, they should speak English. And if they don't, I'll speak English louder. How well do you think that went? Right? Yeah, that's narcissistic. And it's because I was demanding they speak and cater to me. Now, when I go to other places, I learn basic phrases. Please, thank you, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Because when I try to speak their language, they try to speak mine. It's the same thing. If you want to go to dinner and you say, we're going to Italian because I want to go. No, what do? You have a conversation. I'm kind of feeling Italian tonight. Are you in the mood for Italian? But that's not the way people think. People push their agenda all the time. Instead of learning to look and understand someone else, they just push it, and then what happens? A fight comes and everything. And you can use this like, I was in a relationship once with somebody, so we'll talk about like you have fuller upper eyelids, so you're a we person. You like to do things with other people. I was in a relationship with somebody who liked to do that as well. So every time I went and did something without her, it was kind of an issue, right? But if she went and did things by herself, that was completely fine. That used to frustrate me. Then I realized, okay, that's just part of her face. She was very auditory. I'm more visual. So when we were doing things, like if I'm going to the grocery store, she would have to text me what she wanted because she was used to saying it because she wants to hear things. And so we finally figured out, wait, we're on different paths here. So the way our compromise is if I'm going to the store, you need to text me what to get, because if not, I'm coming back with like 2 of the right things and 5 of the wrong things. If she's going to the store and I'd want to text her, I had to learn to put my phone down and just tell her what I wanted, because that was speaking her language and she was speaking my language. So this is how you find compromises in even everyday life.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Imagine how many disagreements you can avoid and just how much closer you'll be in that type of relationship, moving together.
Yeah. During the pandemic, since we're in the room, kind of a cool story here. So this room is called 24, I forget what it's called. But basically it's the 24 months after COVID when the world opened back up again. So it's 2024, but it's also 24 months after we were allowed to go back to the public. So all the paintings in the wall are about that. What started happening is during the pandemic, I got on Clubhouse because I was stuck in my house. I was bored, and I wanted to talk to other people. And so many people came to me for dating advice because they're like, well, what is this? And what is this facial feature? And I actually created a course called Looking for Love in All the Wrong Faces.com. And it's
very creative. I love
it. But it's because what is it? Online dating is people get on, they do a profile, and it's a picture of someone and then a resume down below where people probably lie. And I'm not saying everybody does, but it's like a resume. You embellish the truth a little bit. And so the reason I created that was not to say, oh, don't date this person, but here's what we have in common. Here's what's different. There's nothing wrong. Opposites attract. But if you can have those difficult discussions early on instead of in the middle of the relationship when the honeymoon phase is over, why not take that little bit of extra time and learn what somebody else's face tells you about them, and where do you have success and where do you have strife?
Wise words.
It's a lot of learning for personal
I know.
stuff.
I mean, it is so insightful to hear that from you.
Yeah.
And now you do this, like this is your career.
Right.
And so before you started with doing it, getting your experience out there, and now you're like, oh, I'm a pro.
Yeah.
Like,
There was a lot of imposter syndrome. One, because when you learn anything from a mentor, I'll never live up to that mantle.
Oh, it's always getting into your own head. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I actually just gave this advice to somebody who's actually teaching or learning from the guy I learned from. And you guys can't see it on here, but what I did is they've got the way he described everything in the book, but I put my own phrasing on it. So you have to own it and personalize it and make it yours. And that's one of the ways to learn any skill is learn from the masters, but then personalize it for you. Because if I'm trying to learn the way that you do something, that's not me being authentically me. And so when people buy the book, they're like, well, but you say rounded eyebrows. He calls them curved eyebrows. I'm like, yeah, because curved eyebrows doesn't help me remember anything. But if I say rounded eyebrow people, think about the people around them, that helps me remember it. So that's the big secret with anything is any skill that you want to master, you have to own it. When I was trying to repeat his words, I was being inauthentic and I was being a robot. Once I learned to say things in my own voice and personalize it, but still share the same information, that's when my speaking life changed.
And that challenges your imposter syndrome.
Exactly.
And it's so amazing. I had a conversation just the other day too about imposter syndrome. And it's amazing how we all do that to ourselves.
Absolutely.
And to get through it, but then also rephrasing your mind, doing what is unique to you.
Right.
And so, I mean, that's amazing to see how successful you are and how knowledgeable you are. And you still have to fight that.
Well, and it's success and failure at the same time. I went from a very well paying 6-figure job to starting at 0. And so year one was disappointing, right? So it was when I got out of corporate America, not only did my stress go down, my blood pressure went down. I didn't have to
You're
be
healthier.
on meds. Oh, way healthier. Mental health, physical health.
Right, like all that lifestyle, getting back into it.
Yes. And so the first year was a mental freeing and a physically freeing and a financial struggle. And then you just keep building. So you have to go back. And that's why, for anybody who's watching, who's afraid to restart doing something, is it going to suck year one? Yes. But are you doing something to build? What was your first position when you were, right? Well, you had to be an intern, right? When you first
yeah.
So you had to do stuff for free.
Yeah.
Well, that's most things. Like when I became a speaker, I had to speak for free to prove value that then I can charge ridiculous amounts now to get paid.
Yeah.
Back to your imposter syndrome. One of my coaches is Steve Sims, and there's a great quote that one of his friends said, and that is, only imposters don't have imposter syndrome.
Oh, that is so wise.
Yes, right?
And true.
Yes.
It's like the people that are overconfident.
Yes, are usually faking it.
Yeah.
Most of the people, so I've been on stages with big name people, and the amount of people that have nerves before they walk out or need to go and sit in the corner when they get off stage after they just completely rocked it would blow your mind.
That just shows you how much we're all within that human condition, right?
Yes.
We're all keep it authentic,
Yes.
and it creates more traction. But
Yeah.
then also, I mean, that's so realistic, right? Like that, I'm going to keep that in mind now. Like
Yes.
even if you don't have imposter syndrome, then
Right.
there might be something wrong.
Yeah, think about it. If you're overconfident, like there's be confident, but don't be fake.
Yeah.
You know, so that's kind of the person who walks in with their chest all puffed up and everything else, or it's kind of like the bully who's afraid of getting hit.
Yeah.
They're trying to be the bully, and all of a sudden you take a swing back, and they're like, "Well, you hit me." It's like, yeah. But there's another guy. He runs the Genius Network. I just blanked on his name, but he talks about most speakers are broken, but they want to help other people, and that's why they get the courage to get on stage. Is they want to help others, and that's why they can go out and perform and be these total rock stars, and then they need to decompress after the fact.
Oh,
Yeah,
Joe
Polish. That's who it was.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And one of the other things too, especially you mentioned being in corporate America before,
Right.
and just living in a day of age where everyone's always stressed and anxious and
Yes.
not being conscious.
Mhm.
What is something you notice when you're trying to communicate with someone who's stressed? What do you see? And how do you?
So a big one for stress for anybody, since we're on Zoom calls now, take these off, is if you see the white under somebody's eyes on a regular basis, they're under stress. If you see that their white is above their eyes, that's what you see before someone gets violent. So if you're at work and you see somebody constant into there, just the simple phrase of, "Hey, you doing okay?" That simple phrase, not making judgment, "Hey, you look sick. Hey, you look down. Hey, are you doing okay?" That's it. That's all you have to say to someone. Gives them the opportunity to share what they may be going through. So if you see that sign in somebody in real life, over Zoom, anything like that, taking 2 seconds could save someone's life because you don't know what's going on. We're taught to be, look, I was fired, and that was after 21 and a half years, no severance package. A TikTok video went viral, and they asked me like what my salary was and stuff. And all of a sudden I was mysteriously fired for repetitive poor performance or some BS like that.
Corporate.
Yeah.
That's all you.
The best thing that happened to me, you know, I was mad. I gave myself a day to be mad. And I thought, you know what? I've always wanted to speak. But I kept saying, well, but I make really good money and I've got this safe job and I have a family. And then when that choice was made for me, I had one of two choices: go back to corporate America or give it a shot. So I cashed out a 401k and I lived off that for year one. But it made a world of difference. Like I said, now I can go and pick up my kid at 3:00 and watch her play on the playground with her friends versus not knowing what her life was before. And then, you know, work bleeding past 5:00. Now the difference is I'm gone. I used to travel for work before as well. Sorry, itching for taking off the glasses. You know, I used to travel for work and I was away from my kid and I was stressed. And when I was home, was I really home?
Yeah.
Now when I'm home because I'm just preparing for the next speaking gig, or I've already recorded the courses. I've done the things that aren't drawing from me on a regular day-to-day basis. And so I was stuck in that hamster wheel. I'm not judging anybody who was there. I would probably still be there had I not gotten fired because it was easy to stay.
You just needed that push.
That's exactly it. And so that's the whole thing is there's a really good video by Joe Rogan called Be Your Own Hero. It's like be the hero of your own movie. And it's great when you can do the quick 30-minute one, the 30-minute one, you name it. But we're taught that, like when I'm 49, I was taught, go to school, go work for a big company, retire and die. That was it. And the bigger the name of the company, the more successful you were. So people who started like a franchise working at McDonald's because they wanted to own the franchise, we used to make fun of until they owned the franchise, right? So we were taught that title is important and the name of the company you work for is important. Now you have the capability of you pick when you want to work, you pick how often you want to work. There's a really great book by Daniel Priestley called The KPI Factor, I think is the name of it. Key Person of Influence. And it talks about his prediction, this book was written 15, 20 years ago, was that people will be independent contractors who will come together to work on projects and then step away when they're ready. That's more what you see than how many people want to go get a corporate job. So I'm going to point at you for a minute because you just graduated college and I know you're off screen. But was your goal to go work for a big 5 company when you graduated or to do your own thing?
It was, and then I graduated and realized that's not what I wanted to do anymore.
See, and when I graduated, that's what all we were told to do is, you need to go, kind of like, you have to go to an Ivy League school so you can work for the perfect company. Those things don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw yesterday or this week, Google laid off everybody in Austin, walked in and said, hey, you guys are done. So even working for the biggest companies on the planet doesn't mean you have safety anymore.
Everyone's disposable in that sense.
Absolutely.
In corporate, yeah.
And let's take the corporate side of it now. There's no more loyal employees either, because no longer are you offering a pension or a retirement. So why should I work for you if I can go make more money there? Once you made it about a 401k instead of a retirement, well, if I go there and make more money in my 401k, what are you giving me? And the last company I worked at, they just got rid of PTO time. And some people had like 5 to 6 weeks. And they're like, oh, it's flex time. You can take more. But then people can't take as much time. So the reason to stay at a company before was because the longer I stayed, the more perks I got. Well, the minute that a company like that changes from PTO, where I have 6 weeks a year, to now I'm the same as every new hire, what's my reason to stay?
There's no loyalty then.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think what's really inspiring there too is those of us that did go through corporate, and it took us to realize that it's not worth our health at
Yes.
some point.
Right.
And then if you have the courage, well, first you have the idea, and
Right.
then the courage and the grit,
Yes.
and then give yourself grace, of
Yes.
course, learning pains, whatever it is. It's a lot of courage and rejection, like you said.
Oh,
And
100%.
to but the universe will present itself. You have a vision, you go for it. It takes a risk, and then getting over that imposter syndrome. But it really is about creating that journey. So then you can
yes.
create that balance. I mean,
Right.
that is, at the end of the day, it's your why, your loved ones, your kid, whatever the case is. That's what's going to keep you going. And if it's not making you happy in the corporate job, then it's not worth it.
Agreed.
Yeah. So I think that's amazing to for all y'all out there, even you out here, Macy. That's just, if you have that vision, if you feel like the ideal job is not corporate, well, then go create your own, right?
I'll tell you. So I remember growing up, I saw my dad, my stepdad's my dad, and I have my dad also. But the dad I grew up with he worked for Montgomery Wards, and he worked long hours, and all of his pension was in Montgomery Wards, and he would be unhappy and come home unhappy and everything else, but he had 6 weeks of vacation. And I remember looking at him as a kid thinking, I will never be like that. And what did I grow up to be? Just like that. Well, I got 6 weeks vacation. I make good money. I'm in a miserable job that I hate every day, but I have vacation time. I make good money because that's what we're taught to do. And so you're right. This is what I encourage anyone to do. And this is, you can keep your corporate job if you're happy with it. Do it. Have a side hobby or side hustle, because everyone who gets laid off who doesn't have that is distraught and devastated. But if you've had something that you're dabbling in that you thought, I've always wanted to do this, now's my chance. Or look, I have a skill. A company telling me I'm not of value anymore won't destroy me if I have something else. It doesn't matter what that is. I don't care if you're doing an MLM. I don't care if you have a side job, you can drive Uber, whatever it is. You're not letting one person tell you who you are. You're discovering who you are.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah, and it could be hobbies. It doesn't matter. But you need to have something besides a corporate America job.
Absolutely, especially these days and age.
Yeah, 100%. And learn more soft skills. So body language books,
Yes.
pick them up. Body language is huge, but the problem with body language is Zoom, I only see this much of you. Most of us on Zoom, we're just like this on top, and we're wearing workout shorts down below.
Your pajamas, right?
Yeah. So that's why body language is harder to use this day and age. But people need to keep learning soft skills, because one of the best quotes I've heard recently is, AI may not take your job, but someone who uses AI will take your job. So that's why you need to keep adding. So if you're not dabbling in AI, you need to get started. ChatGPT is free. Pay the $20 to go for the pro version. Learn how it can help you. Don't just go, oh, my job is irreplaceable. Everybody at some point is irreplaceable, because either you make too much money and they can save money by getting rid of you, or a newer technology will replace what you do and can do it faster and better.
Yeah, you can't replace the people skills and the relationships that you build.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
think about, and the best example of this is COVID, since we're surrounded by the 24 exhibit here. What did we miss the most? Face-to-face contact. We went to Zoom, we went to FaceTime. It wasn't as good as meeting somebody in person. You know, that's the whole thing, is human connection is the thing that we crave, no matter what it is. You can live in a huge home with your own family, but you're getting tired of that family. You still want outside connection. You want friends. You want other family members. But that's what we all crave, and that's what we all realized during COVID. I'm sure you did the same as I did. COVID was the first time I went off of autopilot of, I'm just going to go and I'm going to do all these things over and over again. Because when you had to first start thinking like, okay, well, we can only be in groups of however big it was, you start thinking, who are the people I want? And that's when you start re-examining your life again. Who do I want to add back in? Or am I good with just being away from after all this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So valuable.
And yeah, it's just, so the funny thing about that is we were forced into it, but I recommend it on a daily basis. We were talking right before we started. I met you because of a good group of people. I met through another good group of people. And so I still keep in contact with those people, sometimes more than I do people that I've been friends with for a longer period of time, because you have to want to surround yourself with the right people. And sometimes the right people inspire you versus the people you've known for a long time. There's power in proximity as long as it's in the right direction.
Yeah.
But if there are people who are pulling you down while you're trying to raise up, they're not helping you.
You need to change your tribe.
Exactly. Change your tribe. Put yourself in a better place. Learn a skill. Get out there, do things. Yeah.
I'm so glad we met and our past class and we're friends.
Yeah.
And I just hope that continues to grow.
Oh, absolutely.
On our tribe, right?
Yes, absolutely. Well, that's the whole thing. There was the connection through Kimba and through Amanda.
Yeah.
And then ran into you, a month ago, randomly at Tower Club?
It's like we were meant to be like, hey, remember the universe?
And you're like, come on the podcast. I'm like, hell yes. And I'm like, and you need to come on our podcast.
I know.
That's what I like. So yes, that's where the power of connections come in, is because technically, even though we discovered that you live where I used to grow up, where I grew up.
I know, what a small world, right? Like, literally, we are neighbors.
Exactly. And, but we never would have met if it wasn't for being in the right group of people at the right time. And that's the whole thing. Is are you paying attention to more than just your profession? Are you looking at the people you're around? Are you trying to build outside networking? Are you trying to surround yourself with other people? Those are all the important things in life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, as we wrap up that, let's give a little quick bit of advice.
Sure.
So you have a way to make connections and read faces within a minute.
Right.
So let's leave our audience with that skill.
Sure. Okay, so a few simple ones, and this is a lot of times what I'll talk about in the keynote, is eyebrows. Why do I talk about eyebrows? Because eyebrows lead to eye contact. But you can look at someone, I'm going to point at your face, so just for fun with them. Right. So what you can see is she has rounded eyebrows. So rounded eyebrow people, think about the people around them first and themselves second. If you see straight eyebrows, those get straight to the point. Facts, figures, data. And then if you have angled eyebrows like I have, what's my angle? Help me understand it. So when you're talking to someone, let's use the example because I always tell audiences, like, here's how you get free upgrades at hotels. Well, if I walk up and somebody at the hotel has straight eyebrows, I'll say, I'd like an upgrade. If they have an angled eyebrow like I do, are you the person who can help me get an upgrade? If they have rounded eyebrows, this is a long drive or a long flight. I would just wish I had a room that I could stretch out in. Do you have any upgrades available? I'm asking for an upgrade, but I'm tailoring it to the person I'm talking to, that I'm sharing my want, but I'm communicating with them to try and reach that goal. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But you can do it pretty much with anybody. So that's just the simple part of the 3 basic eyebrows. If you, let's say for anybody on here who's dating and they want to get on dating apps, well, somebody has a flatter upper lip, we say the phrase, keep a stiff upper lip, and we want someone to remain stoic. So don't expect to go on a first date and for them to talk all about themselves because somebody has a flatter upper lip. That's not how they're wired. So don't be upset at them for not sharing more when their face is telling you they're more reserved. So it's just these little things you can learn about people over time. Now, I will say, if somebody has a flatter upper lip, once they open up, floodgates are open. But don't expect it as soon as you come in the door. Yeah. So that's just simple ways that you can look at people and think, how can I speak that person's language? What do we have in common? What's different? And that's how connections are built. We all search for commonalities, right? Oh, hey, what's your favorite sports team? Oh, hey, what do you drive? Hey, where do you live? Where'd you go to school? We talked earlier, we went to the same college, so we could then have a 10-minute conversation about the college we went to. That's what we're always searching for. But people's faces tell us a lot about them without you having to ask. And this one has nothing to do with faces, but I'm assuming because everybody in your audience has to go out and network, stop asking people, what do you do? Because it's the same question every other a-hole asks, right? And if they hate their job, they now hate you at the exact same time. However, if you ask people, hey, now that we can travel again, where's your next vacation? Look, people show up to work and people plan their vacation. Why? It's limited time. That will tell you, are they adventurous? Are they hiking? Are they skiing? Are they going, doing all these things? Or do they want to just go to a beach and read? Are they wanting to go, the first thing they ask for, all-inclusive, right? Then they want to drink and party. So you learn more about someone by where they go on vacation because it's limited and they have to put time and effort into planning it. Make sense?
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Huh.
Oh, yeah.
I'll try that at the next event.
There you go. Perfect.
Well, that's amazing. Absolutely a pleasure having you here. Thank you so much.
Yes.
And for those of y'all that want to get in touch with Brian Galke, look at the link below. We'll get all his contact information, his websites, and yeah.
That's easy. Everything is subtle skills, but I learned people can't spell subtle. So if you go to getthecheatsheet.com, that will take you there as well.
Oh, that's too funny. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed today's show, share with your friends and family, and of course, subscribe. Thank you so much for your support.